Welcome to Faith Talks. Let's begin with the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Heavenly Father, we thank you for the gift of today, for your church, for the grace that you give us, and for the mission that we all receive. Help us to love you more and more every day, to be more faithful apostles. We ask this in Jesus' name.
Here we go. Next week, Mike should be back. This week we've missed him. We'll get back with the ideas. We may have next week as a guest a screenwriter and film producer, Aaron Dooley, who has put out a Christian film about our faith, and we'll be giving those out after masses the next couple of weeks. I have them in the office. But I wanted to, use it either next week as an introduction to her, put it out on our newsletter that we'll be giving these out, so look for them and let people meet her next week in the evening. It promises to be very interesting why she made the movie she did and what it's about and her own journey of faith. So that'll be next week. But this week, during masses today, I'm still, within my own family, talking to my sister. I haven't seen my sister, brother-in-law, niece, my great niece, my niece's husband. They're all living together right now. My niece and her husband save up money for the house. So they decided to move back home for about a year, which has been extended because of coronavirus, but you never know with the mortgage rate so low right now. But in any case, I haven't seen them since March because at least two of them are high risk. And so, you stay away, you're killing me. Not to see your family at all. It makes me think of those people who've had relatives dying in the hospital and haven't been allowed to go see them or be with them when they die. Which is, I don't even want to think of it. I don't even want to think of that. But, people die alone. Anyway, so I was talking today about just a little bit about the fear of the coronavirus right now. But the early Christians had to face fear also. Their fear was not of the unknown, like a lot of this is, what if I get it, what happens? Their fear was of what was clearly known. That we can be arrested, so to speak, crucified, burned, put in the Colosseum and fed to animals, or prepared for some of the gladiators to hack us to death and killed in all kinds of horrible ways. And were they afraid? Of course they were. Who would want that to happen to them? By the same token, they did not give in to the pressure to compromise in their faith. To say, let me put it aside for a little while. They had mass in catacombs everywhere, homes where they might not get caught. But compromise it, put it aside, say, oh, well, Jesus, he'll understand. If you just put him away for a little while. Which, leads to the question, a couple of them. Number one, is there persecution in the church today? And number two, at least in America, I can't speak for the rest of the world, but at least in America, have we become too spoiled in faith that we take it for granted? That, it's just, we don't even notice because we take it for granted. When, let's say this, being spit in the face, how what you do really doesn't matter. I told yesterday at First Communion, I don't know if I told you this. All the time, this was years ago now. Not that long, within the first couple of years after I was ordained, and it was a hospital in Culver City. I got sent to the hospital to visit someone. And I don't know if the doctor was in a bad mood or what it was. Or if he just didn't like religion or a priest or what. Anyway, at some point he says to me, well, I save lives. What do you do? you got to think fast. You have to think fast. And I said, more or less, God bless you. The work you do is great. But no matter how well you do your job, every one of your patients eventually dies. If I do my job well, mine live forever.
What did you say to that?
Well, there's nothing to say to that. Okay, he said, one for you. So anyway, let me put that on the table for you tonight. Are we spoiled for the church? And is there persecution? But because we don't really undergo it here right now, although in Portland they were burning Bibles and crucifixes.
Yep. Well, about 6 months ago, there was a conference by the State Department, and the State Department studied the situation, and they said there's 3 regions in the world where there is major religious persecution. Number 1 is the Middle East, especially in the Arab countries.
Yeah.
If you are found doing anything Christian, you're put into jail. Second, and I guess within that region you might include Africa, and especially Nigeria is going through terrible persecution. We could include Ghana, we could include some of the other countries, but Nigeria has had like 20,000 people either killed or wounded in the last 2 to 3 years because they're Catholics or Christians. Last week, there was a village that was totally captured, and a few were killed. And they said, basically, you either convert to Islam, or we will sell you into sexual slavery or just regular slavery. And so they say there is more slavery today than ever, and a lot of it is this Islamic slavery that they're going from village to village, and Islam is going from north to south and spreading. So there's terrible persecution, and the bishops in Nigeria are pleading because they say, why is everybody ignoring us? We're being butchered to death, and does anybody care? The other region is China, and there is horrific, terrible persecution. They will not allow anybody 18 years old or younger to attend a Christian church. They have shut down, I think, 20% of the churches in the last 6 months. With this whole everybody worried about the coronavirus, they're going through and just dismantling churches. They have the Uyghurs, who are the Muslims, who there's over 1 million of them, and they go and they've imprisoned them, and they put them into uniforms, they put them on trains, and they're working at Nike and all these American companies, but basically as slaves. They're slave laborers. And to all the women, they've gone and sterilized all of them. And this is going on today.
I mean, it's just about China question, because in China for a long time we had two Catholic churches, the National Church and the Underground Church. The Underground Church was essentially the true faith, and the National Church was tied into the government to keep an eye on religion, to keep control of religion, and so forth. So when they say they're closing churches, is it National Church, Underground Church, or both?
It is the Underground Church that is being worst, but still they're not enabling even the patriarch, the National Church. They're putting tremendous limits on. And just read an article that they said they're trying to avoid what happened in Poland. They think that the Soviet Union was destroyed by religion. And as long as people believe in something other than the government and the power of the government, as long as there's another power, you never have total control over your people. And so their attitude is one of, we need to control these people and we need to destroy religion. And the hatred involved, but also the companies in the United States go along with it. Even the NBA are complicit in a lot of what they're doing. There's a lot of money there. I mean, you know, we go and Google says, we'll give you our search engine, but you can control it. You can, you know, and we compromise to the Chinese as they are persecuting left and right.
I've told you this before, but it's, you know, it's still, I don't know what to think of it yet, except the courage of the guy. When I was in the other parish before I moved here, I was the dean of the deanery, which automatically puts you on the council of priests. So this is 5 or 6 years ago now. There was a priest who had been stationed here in the U.S., but he was from, I don't remember the country, Syria, Lebanon, one of those, the countries undergoing horrible persecution, and which is the cradle of Christianity. Where it first started growing, even before it moved to Rome. And he said, he was there with a couple of, it may have been a bishop from that area and a couple of other priests, but anyway, they told us, you know, whatever number of years ago, 10 years ago, there were 300,000 of us down in this particular region where I'm from, before the Muslims started killing us down in this house. Well, 14 people converted, died. We were 300,000, now we're down to 3,000. You know, in the real birthplace of Christianity. And he said, and they're telling me I have to go back. They need me, so I have to go back to there, knowing that if he went back there, he would die.
Wow.
And somebody asked him, what are you going to do? And he said, what can I do? I have to go. They tell me they need me. I have to go. So how come in the U.S. we're not aware of all this? Or, well, we're not aware of it, but if everybody was aware of it, would it make a difference?
Well, is there indifference? I mean, we seem to be so worried about the polar bear. And it's not that I have anything against polar bears. You know, polar bears are, I guess, nice as long as he's not hungry and chasing you. But the bottom line is we're really comfortable. And thinking of these things makes us uncomfortable. And when was the last time an article like this appeared in the LA Times? It's really interesting. Why has the LA Times, NBC, ABC, CBS, CNN, CNBC, they haven't had one article in years about this persecution. And it seems to be this, you know, if it's politically correct, we'll blow it up. If it's not politically correct, like persecution of religion, we'll pretend it's not happening. It's sort of like, do we realize how controlled we are by the media?
Well, I wonder if they think it would be a good thing for the world if religion were gone.
John Lennon.
Yeah,
imagine.
Well, that was proposed as the new national anthem for the United States
By
some
whom?
months ago.
By whom?
I don't remember. I just heard it. Oh, you know, we Francis Scott Key was a racist, therefore we shouldn't be using Star Spangled Banner as our national anthem. We should have a new one, and proposing, imagine there's no heaven.
No religion. It's easy if you tried.
Yeah, easy to imagine with the arrogance of presumption. Oh, if we get rid of religion, everyone will live in peace.
Yeah.
I mean, who who are the people primarily?
Well, I invite them to live in China to see just how nice it is. And it's I think we're a little bit too comfortable. And they say the blood of martyrs is when we wake up to our need of God.
Okay, now, I mean, this is easy to talk about, but let me set up a hypothetical that the entire country were listening to us right now, at least all the Catholics in the U.S. were listening to us tonight, and became aware of persecution in China and persecution in Nigeria and persecution in the Middle East, and even just a tiny taste of it here, with government telling us religion is not essential. You can get in line behind beauty parlors or trying to set San Gabriel mission, but even a taste of it here. If everybody were aware of it, what should we do? What should someone do? And I don't have an answer to that, so I'm not sure.
Yeah. I think there's three things we need to do. I think we need to double down on how important our faith is to our own life. When there is persecution, you just see that it becomes essential. Second thing we need to do is we need to be even more present in the public square. We need to not be afraid to give Christian solution to complicated problems. And number three, we need to be the most charitable people on earth. In 1996, I was the chaplain to the Olympic Village in Atlanta, Georgia. And there were 12,000 athletes, and about half of them from Catholic countries. And there were masses in French, Italian, Spanish, and English were the principal languages that we had 2-3 masses every Sunday and 2 masses every day.
On Sunday in every language?
Sunday in every language, and every day in Spanish and in English, and one day in French. Do you know how many athletes went to Mass?
How many?
6. Probably 12 coaches and 6. It was like we were amazed that nobody went. But there was one girl from the Sudan, and she had a cross burned onto her wrist. And she ran the 400 meters. And she was every single day for 1 hour before the Blessed Sacrament. The day she won the gold medal, I went in, and all of a sudden I saw on the tabernacle her gold medal. And she was prostrate before Jesus. And she said to me, she says, "Father, I thought coming here I'd meet so many Catholics. And they say there are many Catholics here, but don't Catholics believe that he's real? Don't Catholics really appreciate his presence? In my church, it has been bulldozed 4 different times. And the last time, my 2 brothers were crushed by the bulldozers as everybody lay down to try to stop the bulldozers from bulldozing our church. And they died. So you hear stories like that. But in this innocence, don't you believe that he's really here with us? And I just tears began to flow. And you're just going, wow. How deep is our belief? That woman I will never get out of my mind. What a faith.
All right, let's go backward. I want to go through those things one by one. The three things. What was the first one? You know, if we were Judge Judy, she'd play the tape back.
Second one was public square. The first
Right.
one I think is we have to need God even more and double down on our own faith
Right. Yeah. To double down on our own faith.
and know it and live it in a real way out of love.
So why do you think people just take the faith for granted? Not to say they don't believe, but
Yeah, and I don't want to judge anybody because everything, it's different. I just think that we're too comfortable. We're so, on the one hand, comfortable. We have everything we need. And on the other hand, we're so busy. We're so filled with things we have to do. And there's so many expectations. And those two things sort of sweep us away without even knowing it. And we never need him radically. We're never in crisis. We always can handle it until we can't.
but you know, in a sense, you can tell me if we're in agreement or if you think I'm off track. But it kind of reminds me of college and then the seminary in this way. Because we were in college, there was so much homework, papers, reading, and oh my gosh. And in the seminary, there was not enough time to do all the reading that was assigned, plus all the other things they expect you to do. You know, got this event, you have to go to this event, you have to do this, and you have to be here, and then, oh, and by the way, you know, you've got 20 pages in this subject, or 20 in this subject, and you got paper or two. Trying to figure out how do you do it all? And then eventually, well, I mean, okay, I'll speak for myself, although I know I'm not unique in this. Eventually, I figured it out. Okay, these are the things I need to do to get A's. And these are the things that I should do, but it's going to be irrelevant to getting an A or not getting an A. You know, it'd be better if I could do it, but you have to figure out, okay, what do you have time for and all of that, and some stuff you have to put aside. And you know, the question is, if you can do A, B, and C and get an A, or do A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J and get an A, or you're going to do all of that, or you're going to do this. And the answer is, you know, it's the path of least resistance. Okay, what's the minimum that I have to do that I can get the grade I want? And if I go over that, it's okay. But a sense of minimalism well, the least, so I still have time for all the other things. So I think what I'm saying is that if you're going to get the same reward for doing a lot or doing a little bit, you'll choose to do a little bit. Or if you get the same reward for doing something or doing nothing, very often we will choose to do nothing. So I think that idea of, well, what does it matter? Everybody, don't we all go to heaven anyway? So, you know, I can skip church. I can skip prayer. I'd rather watch football today, or oh, you know, I hate the coronavirus, but at least it lets me stay home on Sunday and watch on TV if I choose to. You think that's accurate?
Yeah, but I also think that we're challenged constantly. You can be whatever you want to be. And you want to be a success in this, a success in that. And the world is not challenging us to be saints. How many times are we challenged to be heroes in the faith? I think we have to find a way maybe to do that more. People think, saints are not normal. I'm normal, they're not. And they forgot that they were born to be saints too. And that's their mission in life, the whole idea of mission. And I think we need to recover that. You have a mission that God himself has given you. To be a saint, to love, to be heroic.
Yeah. You know, when you talk about double down on our faith, boy, there's so many ways. Makes me think of two of my favorite saints, Francis de Sales and Saint Therese of Lisieux, who both said the same thing. Saint Therese, I can't do great things, but I can do little things with great love.
Right.
And Saint Francis de Sales, who spoke about the practice of the little virtues, meaning ordinary, everyday things where you have the opportunity to be virtuous rather than mean or cruel, with patience and with kindness and with politeness and deference and humility and so forth. That you get the opportunity everywhere to do it. Doubling down on our faith means maybe instead of going on social media or getting on email and writing the meanest things we can because you don't have to see the person you're writing to. That is such a great evil to me. Just the horrible things that people say because now it's electronic. They would never say face to face because you see the person. Suddenly it's not just an idea of the person you're talking to. But in any case, what do you think about the practice of little virtues and doing small things really well?
I think it's everything. Because what you do in the little things come out in the big. We can't be mean and think we're going to be kind when it counts. It goes deep. It's the little things that make who we are. I so agree with Francis de Sales there. But how many of us have the intentionality of saying, I'm really going to work on my humility, or I'm really going to work on my patience, or I'm really going to work on some other virtue. And I think we need to go back to that more and more.
Particularly this time, I always think of it, and it's, all this virus stuff is, I find myself so on edge now. Constantly, before everything's going away, you're able to keep your tension down. But right now, it feels like up to here, and little things are becoming so irritating. And I say, okay, it's not up there, it's in here. It's not up there, it's in me. And you've got to do something about it. But I am convinced that we have to be able, when you talk about the little virtues, to take blows from people and not strike back. Yeah,
that way to love them.
To accept it with love.
Absorb their hurt. Because most of the time, that's where it's coming from.
Yeah.
Some type of hurt.
And knowing it's going to hurt you.
But for me, it's just not only absorbing. It's taking it in and directing it to God. We only take it in and repress it, we're going to be in trouble. But if we make it a prayer to God and say, wow, this was humiliating, I give it to you, Lord. And we give it all, anything that makes me center myself on Him, it sets me free. It sets me free to love.
Yeah, I just watched this past week with one of my godsons, the last half hour of Gandhi. And the whole practice of nonviolence. But before Gandhi, there was Jesus. Father, forgive them. They don't know what they're doing. Those who live by the sword die by the sword. Do you see what I've done for you by getting on my hands and knees before you and washing your feet? I've given you an example.
Yep.
But boy, it is hard sometimes. If I'm ever giving the impression that this is an easy thing to do.
It's not. And that's why, especially the little virtues, are really a result of our prayer life. the more we pray, the more capable we're going to be in practicing the virtue. And they used to ask Thomas Aquinas, how do you know if you have a good prayer life or not? He says, your little virtues.
Yeah. Someone asked me once, okay, and it was a flippant answer, I know, but it was meant to get a reaction. Somebody said, well, how do I pray? And I said, I give up, how do you breathe? Should just be part of what comes natural. Instead of thinking about it, it should just be part of the day. In the sense of awareness of the presence of the Holy Spirit among us, God with us. Jesus, when 2 or 3 are there, I make sure I'm there with you. I mean, just the awareness of it as you go through the day, so that it influences every decision, everything about what you do during the day. It's not what you do at that point, it's who you are.
Yes.
All right, let's move on to the second one. Public arena. Can you explain what you're talking about more there? And I mean, if I put you on the spot with this, I'm sorry. But go ahead.
No, the public square, we need, I believe, not to be afraid to give Christian solutions based on charity, based on the social doctrine of the church, which is extremely well thought out. Real solutions to problems that are killing our culture. It's easy to say, for example, racism is terrible. Let's get rid of racism. Okay, but what's the root of racism? How can we really tackle these things? What is, the real problem here? And I think the church has such deep answers, whether it be redoing family life, whether it be really expanding education, especially to the inner cities, but not just educate their mind, but make sure we're educating the entire family. And we're bringing it in the family, where we're reaching out, as Pope Francis keeps talking about, to the peripheries, to the, those who haven't been to church in years. But we can't, people say separation of church and state. Well, this country was based on Christian values, where Christians were not afraid to talk about freedom and liberty and the equality under the law, that all people were equal. Some did not follow it the way they should have, but when Christianity gets into the public square, it transforms culture in the best of ways.
No, I mean, you made me just thinking about slavery. Even though, since I taught history, where the Republican Party was founded to put an end to slavery.
Yep.
And when Abraham Lincoln joined, when it was in its infancy and then became president, I mean, that's what the big thing they stood for. It still amazes me how many people during the Civil War from the North joined knowing they were going to die because they believed slavery was evil. And there's some people, of course, keep the Union together, but there were immigrants from all kinds of countries also fighting for the Union. And they didn't have that great love yet, because they were, particularly the Irish immigrants, who heard the call to put an end to an evil and came and were willing to fight to put an end to it. But anyway, in the public sphere, how do you think the church has been doing the last 6 months by being in the public sphere?
Truly, my opinion, and this is only my opinion, I think I've been looking for the voice of leadership to say, hey, as a church, we are essential. And I think the church needs to stand up for its rights, Because the moment the church doesn't stand up for its rights, our rights are going to disappear, especially when you see so many people who are hostile to the faith. I mean, the person, but I don't want to get into too many, but there's people who are running for office today who hate the Catholic Church, who absolutely have a track record of hatred towards the Catholic Church, who've said in Senate hearings that just because somebody is a Knight of Columbus, that they're radical and they should not be allowed.
An extremist.
Oh, they're an extremist,
Knights
and you're
of
going,
Columbus.
okay, a Knight of Columbus? Are you kidding me? You know, and yet this is where it's going. That if you go to church every Sunday, you're an extremist who is dangerous.
They belong
Really?
to an extremist organization, the Knights of Columbus.
And yeah, and it's shocking for me because they're trying to eliminate anybody who has any values that are not theirs. This cancel culture. If, we're not in agreement with them, we must be radical and we must be filled with hatred. And that's where it's going right now. And they have a right to beat you up. They have a right to protest. They have a right to harm you because they're the victims. And I think this is the antithesis of what our culture should be, needs to be. And it's pure, unadulterated anarchy. But you have people running for office who over and over and over have shown that they're absolute bigots. I mean, that's the bottom line. They're bigots.
So how do we make our voice heard without returning evil for evil?
To become involved in the public square, to become involved and not to be, to understand our faith and the principles of our faith so well that we can eloquently talk about the issues and listen to others and not get into name calling, not get into demonizing. I think as a culture, the moment we start tit for tat demonizing people, it's really serious. We need to talk about the issues with love and tremendous respect. But we better know the issues inside and out, especially from the church's point of view.
Where would people get that information, that knowledge?
Catechism. Things like Bishop Barron, his podcasts are very informative. Reading, I think we need to get back to reading about the issues. Reading about the issues. It's
difficult because if you read the LA Times or mainstream news, you get one side of the story. Where do you find other sources of information? And you have to be careful. You go online, you don't know how, if you're reading, if it's truth or if it's not truth, if it's slanted one way, slanted the other way.
Yeah. I go to articles every day. I look at the National Catholic Register. I look Crux now.
Crux, C-R-U-X.
C-R-U-X, right? Which is John Allen, which is very good. And those are the two, and then the Catholic News Service. Mm-hmm. Those would be the three sources that I look for every day. And there are articles about what the different candidates are saying, why one, who's Catholic, who's anti-Catholic, who's not, in which views this person doesn't agree with the church and this views the other person, and they go through it very, very, very well. But I think we need to understand all of these issues.
On a scale of 1 to 10, oh gosh, I'm sorry to do this to you. Scale of 1 to 10, how are the U.S. bishops doing, in your opinion?
Well, I haven't heard that much from them.
Yeah.
Maybe a 3.
Yeah, really haven't heard much from them at all. But it
I mean, when the Supreme Court justice was accused of, Knights of Columbus and all, did anybody say anything? I mean, those are the moments where I think we have to stand up and say, hey, just because we're a Knight of Columbus doesn't mean we're an extremist organization. And I just haven't heard that leadership. And, maybe I just am not reading what I need to read. So again, I haven't heard an awful lot.
Yeah, neither have I. And to tell you the truth, I'm not sure why. I really am not sure why. All right, let's go on to the third one, which was become the most charitable people in the world. In Europe, let me use a term that's overused, but this has been over and over and over proven. Studies have shown, as socialism has crept through Europe, that the more people depend on the government to give them everything, whatever they need, the less charitable people become.
Oh,
They expect the government then to take care of charity. What's mine is mine. Anything else the government takes care of.
I've lived for 10 years in Europe, 2 years in Spain, 8 years in Italy. I've traveled all over Europe. There's nothing worse than socialized medicine. There's nothing, it's nobody wants to do anything because it's the government's responsibility. And then you have the government bureaucracy not doing anything. So everybody's ticked off, blaming everybody else. And the amount of initiative of people who really care, it's day and night to the United States. And I mean, that's why I truly believe socialism does not work. It takes away the initiative and all the power. You give it to government, and it's all about power. It's not about love anymore. And it's not about how can I squeeze the most out of this dollar.
I don't want to make excuses for Europe.
Oh, I love Europe, but
But the 20th century, World War I, to see, and the question has to come up. It had to come up to watch the millions of young men die during World War I in trenches with gas warfare, and you ask yourself, for what? For what? All these people who believe in God and believe in Christianity just go. These leaders sending people into the trenches more and more and more to die, and for what? For more political power, for more influence in the world, for more trade, for what? And then followed shortly by World War II, and at least then there we had a clear enemy, Hitler. But by the same token, after those two wars, in a sense, I can almost understand that the question came up: what good is religion? If this is what it did for us.
But my question was, how were the churches before World War I? And the truth is, they were a mess. They were an absolute mess. It was, I believe, 20-25% participation at Mass in Italy before World War I. My great-grandfather sold horses. He was this big horse trader, if you want to call him that. And in World War I, he had 8 Italian generals come out to buy 10,000 horses. So he took them to the big horse shows. He said, good one, not good, good. And he just picked out 10,000 horses for these guys. It came to Sunday. He says, what time do you want to go to Mass? And they all laughed. And they said, Mass? Oh, that's for women. That's for women. And he said, well, I'm Irish. It's for me. So he went to Mass, And it really hit him that these were the leaders of Italy. Nobody went to Mass, and they made fun of anybody who didn't go to Mass. My French great-grandfather, same thing in World War II. They were Catholic in name only. They never went to church. And so my whole thing is, when you're not living the faith, you can call yourself Catholic or Christian or anything else. When you're not living the faith, when there's faith persecution, and you see it in 1917 in Portugal and Fatima. The socialists were persecuting these little kids, right? And the hostility towards faith back in 1917. So we idealize and say, Europe must have been really, really Catholic and really, really Christian. It wasn't. And because it wasn't, there were wars, because there was selfishness and there was a disregard for life.
After World War I, after World War II, in the Cold War, finally when Pope John the 23rd and the church said, okay, we need a council because what we were doing was not working.
Yes.
And that's why it's kind of frustrating when we see people glorifying the past and saying, no, the only right way was what existed before Vatican II. And yet, if you study history, you're knowing, okay, that was no longer working. People were not relating to it.
Yep.
And so they had the Vatican Council. How do we make this religion, this faith, accessible and understandable by people of this age?
You're absolutely right.
And that's what Vatican II was about. And in terms of the length of time since it ended when 1960, 50 years ago, that's a very short period. Right? Yeah, very short period of time, 55 years since it ended for implementation of all the ideas and tweaking here and there and so forth. But that's still, what was behind it, that idea that we need to make this religion, I don't want to say relevant because I don't like that word, but understandable, achievable, part of the lives of people in this age and this era after what we have experienced. And that still goes on today, when we talk about the new evangelization.
And that's what I think Francis is trying to say, especially to this generation. If we don't lead with mercy and love, if we just go right to the catechism, and, I love the catechism. I came through the 1970s, and the catechism gave so much clarity. And I think it helps the church in so many ways. So there is no bigger fan of the catechism than me. But to lead with the catechism, the young people of today, wow, if you don't lead with mercy and love and tenderness, they're not going to be open. We need to get them absolutely to the catechism. But we need to lead with mercy and gentleness and kindness. And that's where we need to be visiting people in the hospitals. We need to be helping the poor. We need to be those you can count on to take care of those who have not. The St. Vincent de Paul Society, so many people who are, putting gang members to work and all of that. And that's the church and the church's initiative. People need to see that more and more every day.
Yeah, when you say putting people to work on the poor's foot, I just make that comment. I was so surprised because John and I, Tuesdays and Thursdays, we take that fairly fast bike ride down to the beach, like about 50 miles round trip and so forth. When we get down to Seal Beach, Long Beach sometimes at Seal Beach, we go into Jabatini to have coffee before we start back and find there that all of the baked goods they sell in there are produced by Homeboy Industries, Father Craig Boyle, creating work right down in the middle of Frogtown of the gang territory, and getting people out of gangs by offering them a way to feel good because they see the work of their hands, they earn income, they can support their families. So what great work he does.
Yep.
You know what I think maybe what bothers me more than anything, and it hasn't been that the mayor or the governor, even though essentially they've implied it, that religion is not essential, going to church is not essential. That is not how I read it, because if they said that, we could do things with that. But for me, this faith, this belief in Jesus, is not something I do; it's who I am. If you take that out, and I don't exist anymore. So my understanding of what's going on today is being told by whoever you want to say, protest movements, government, whoever, if you don't think the way that we think, you are not essential. And we don't care what happens to you.
That's where we're going. That's where we're going. And that is the scariest thing on earth.
Yeah. We break people away from faith because if they live out their faith, they are not essential.
You know who it sounds like?
Twilight Zone.
Twilight Zone or China.
Or China.
Because that's exactly what China does.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden you're going, they're sounding like the Chinese government.
Yeah.
Whoever would have thought that here in the United States?
Think like we do.
Well, we need to stand up and say, no, this is not China. And I think if we don't start standing up, we are selling our own faith for the future generations. We're sabotaging it. And we're going to be responsible for a church that's going to be in real trouble down the road because we were too weak or afraid to stand up.
Let me ask you a loaded question. Isn't that what Jesus says is one of the signs of end times?
It certainly is. End times could be another 1,000 years, though. It just starts now.
Who knows? But it is a sign, and he says, pay attention to the signs so you can stay prepared and stay ready.
Putting me on the spot a lot today, huh? Jesus.
Well, thank Mike. He wasn't here tonight. All right. I think that's probably enough for tonight.
Good.
So pretty soon we will be back to our regular schedule of having guests.
Good.
And so forth. Amen.
Amen.
All right, Lord, thank you for the evening and the ability and the grace to discuss important issues. Issues that remind us to place you at the center of our life. And so help us to be gracious, help us to be charitable, and help us to have the grace to speak out when it's necessary.
Amen.
Amen. In the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.